Good morning, everybody. So it's today's daf is Ayin Aleph, and we will begin the bottom of 70b at the new parak, the eighth parak. Kol Zevachim shenisarvu b'chatos hamesos. Any korban, any sacrifice that got mixed up with um, chatos offerings that can't be offered, and they have to be basically left to die. So, first of all, the Mishnah seems to be talking about you, but the Gemara will modify this. But on first glance, it seems to be talking about you've got a whole herd of chatos hamesos, and I'll get to that in a minute, what those are. But these are invalid chatos offerings, and they have to be left to die. And you have one other korban that got mixed up with them. You don't know which is which. Um, so. Um, we'll see, Yamusu Kulam. We'll see that in a second, that they all must be left to die, which seems kind of obvious, so the Gemara will turn this on its head. But let's stick with that for the time being. So in this case, if they're mixed up with either chatos what is chatos hamesos? What are chatos offerings that have to be put to death? So the Gemara in Tamura describes five cases. There's a Rashi here that's kind of confusing and is lists actually six that aren't identical with those five. Not even five of them are identical with the list of five. So there are different emanations of Rashi. But let's just go with Torah. There are five types of chatos. One is Vlad chatas. So you have a pregnant chatas and it has a baby. So that baby, while it was still a fetus, it became part of a chatas, but now it's a separate animal and it doesn't have any particular sin to atone for. So what can you do with it? You can't. It's not chulin. It's sanctified as a chatas, but it can't be used for that sin. So that's one. Chatas shemesu ba'aleh. If a person who sinned set aside an animal for a chatas and then he died before he could offer it, so there's no sin to atone for. There's no person to atone for anymore. So what do you do with that chatas? You can't make it. You can't. It's still sanctified as a chatas for that particular purpose. There's nothing else you can do with it, so it has to be left to die. Um, Tmuras chatas, if you try to exchange one for another. So, when you exchange kachim, you're messed up, because what happens is both of them now have sanctification attached to them, but only one chatas can be used to atone for a particular sin. So the other one, you can't do anything with. V'kishakipru ba'aleh, or let's say you have a chatas ready to be offered, and then it got lost, and then so you did another one, and you actually sacrificed another chatas, and then this one is found. So what's its status? It can't be used anymore as a chatas, but it can't be decommissioned either. And the fifth one is. If it becomes more than a year old. So chatas has to be a 1 year old animal. If you delayed, or for whatever reason, it's now 2 years old, it's not valid anymore. But again, you can't just decommission it. So these are all chatos hamesos, and another animal that got mixed up with chatos hamesos has to acquire the severity with which you treat um, the chatos hamesos. Oh, Bashar Niskal, the Mishnah continues. Or if another korban got mixed up with a Shor Niskal, an ox that has to be stoned. So generally, that's if an ox kills a person, we have to stone the ox, have to kill the ox. And while it's waiting to be executed, another animal gets mixed up with it, another korban gets mixed up with it. So what are you going to do? So Afilu achas bi'ibo, even if it's one mixed up with 10,000 others, yamusu kulan, they all must be left to die. So again, obviously, if it's one regular korban that mixed up with 10,000 other ones, obviously that one's going to be left, has to be treated as being left to die. The Gemara will turn this on its head, as I mentioned. Nisarvu b'shor shenevdo bo'avera. What if a regular sacrifice gets mixed up with a bunch of other animals with which some sin was committed? For example, Oh, shehemi saso adam al pi echad. For example, um, an animal that killed another person, but there's only one witness. So if there's two witnesses, it's a shar niskal, right? Then it gets executed. But if there's only one witness, so we consider this an animal that was involved in an avera, in a misdeed, but we don't kill it. Al pi abalim, or if someone comes and tells us that his own animal killed someone, so that's also isn't subject to, that's an exemption from the execution of the animal. But it's still something, an animal with which a sin was done. Burovea venirba, or an animal that was involved in bestiality. Bemukta, Venevad, or an animal that was designated for Avodah Zarah or was actually worshipped as Avodah Zarah. Be'esnan and Mechir, or it was used as payment for prostitution or for purchasing a dog, which the Torah specifically prohibits. Um, uh, or Bikilayim Betrefa Biyotzedofen, or then these are not sins being done with the animal, but if this animal is a hybrid or it is a trefa, it's it has a fatal defect, or it was born by cesarean, so it's not eligible to be a carbon. So again, these three are not sins, but they're disqualifications nonetheless for the carbon. So if another carbon got mixed up with these types of animals, yiruat shisavu, the animals should be put out to pasture until they get a blemish. So unlike a chatos, which even if it gets a blemish, you can't benefit from it. In these cases, imach, or they can be sold once they get a blemish. And then what do? Yavi bidmei hayafa shebehem me'oso amin. And then you take the funds. You take the value of the most expensive one because you've got all these animals and there are varying values, and one of them is the korban, right? The carbon that got mixed up with them. So maybe it's the most expensive one that is the carbon. So to be on the safe side, you sell all the animals, and the funds from the most expensive one that you sell are used to buy the kind of carbon that we're dealing with that got mixed up with the other ones. Nisarvum b'chulin tamimim. What if a regular
But what is
carbon?
an example? I'm sorry. What is an example of shenit mitarvu b'shor sheneva or bo avera? Because we just listed a number of averot. The cherove and nirba muktzah. So what when the
These are
Gemara
examples.
what?
These are the examples that the Mishnah is bringing.
Oh, but when it says shenevad bo avera, those are the examples of avera,
Yeah.
or is
So
it
the
just
word, yeah. So it says "oh," right? It says "or," which is unusual. So I think everyone understands this as like meaning either of these following situations, not like Nevda Bavera or these other things. It's like
right?
these are examples of Nevda Bavera. Yeah, good question. It's an
That's what I
unusual
was a little
language.
puzzled by that when
Yeah,
it said
yeah.
"oh," that it
Right.
was referring something else.
Right. So yeah, it's unusual that the Mishnah would use the word or that way, but nonetheless, that's the only way to understand this, and so that's how everyone understands this. Yeah, good question. Um, Okay. Next case, nisarvu b'chulin tumimim. What if a carbon becomes mixed up with regular animals? They're eligible to become carbonos, but they're not. They're regular animals. They're chulin, right? So then what do? Yimachur chulin l'tzarchei oso amin. Then you sell them all, and you sell them all and use the money to buy a new carbon of the kind that was mixed up with them. Um, or at least the as much money as you need to replace that
You sell all of them
animal.
because Gemara says "yemachru achulin,"
Yeah, but they are sold as chulin. Um, um,
but
I'm
aren't
sorry.
some of
No,
the
no.
other
I'm
animals?
sorry. I misstated. They should be sold as they should all be sold to other people who need to bring that kind of carbon. So, an animal is designated as a shlamim, and then you lose track of it. It gets mixed up with the rest of the herd. So you have to take that whole herd and sell it to people for use as a shlamim. So that way, you know that the one that was already a shlamim is still going to be used as a shlamim. It's going to be used by somebody else, but if it's not a chatas, that's okay, right? I can take, my shlam, my animal that I designated as a shlamim, I can sell it to you, and you use it as a shlamim.
But don't we have some animals that were not chulin? They were already
So
consecrated?
the case is that one animal is consecrated. It got mixed up with animals that were not consecrated. So what you do is to be safe, you sell all of the animals for the purpose of the type of carbon that was mixed up with them for use
Mm.
by somebody else, so presumably. Okay, so that way you know that since all of these animals were sold as, let's say it's a shlamim, so you know that the one that was originally a shlamim is also still a shlamim. See?
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Kachim b'kachim min b'mino. What if you have a case where you have not it got mixed up not with chulin, but with other you have a shlamim, and it got mixed up with a bunch of other shlamim. Um, so zei krav l'shem mishahu, v'zei krav l'shem mishahu. Each one should be, but you don't know whose is whose, right? Like my shlamim got mixed up with your shlamim. So how do you? It has to be done lishma, right? It has to be done for the purpose of the owner who's bringing it. So you can have this intention that I'm bringing this animal for the purpose of whoever its owner may be, you or me. Okay. Um, Kachim b'kachim min b'she'eno mino. What if you have two different kinds of karbanos that got mixed up together? You're stavu. So then you can't do it, right? You can't say like it's either each animal is either a shlamim or I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. Um,
Chata? Could it be a chata?
no, not a chatas. That's kachim kachim. We'll get to that in a minute. But kachim kalim, like maybe a bechor. Okay, so um, so it has to be done for the purpose of the right kind of carbon. So you can't do the trick where you just do it like for whoever's this is. That's okay for whoever's this is, but it can't be for whatever type of carbon this is. It has to be with a specific intent. So then you can't bring it at all. Excuse me. Savu. So then you put it out to pasture until it gets a mum. Um, V'yavi b'dmei hayafa shebahen mimin zeh, b'dmei hayafa shebahen mimin zeh. Let's say one of the animals is worth 1,000 and the other is worth 750. Um, so you have to, and you don't know which is the shlamim and which is the bechor, let's say. So you have to buy $1,000 bechor and $1,000 shlamim, um, and you have to eat the difference basically, because you can't shortchange either of them because this one might have been the $1,000 one or this one might have been the $1,000 one. So when you do the exchange, each one has to be $1,000. V'yafsi most of me beso, and you lose out basically. You're out of pocket for the difference. Nisaru Bukhar was a bad example because Nisaru
Because in a
Bukhar.
Bachor, we cannot even sacrifice because you don't, there's no Beit HaMikdash. So it has to go out until it gets a
Right,
blemish,
right.
right?
Bukhar was a bad example because the Mishnah treats that separately. So Nisarvu Bukhar b'maser. What if shlamim gets mixed up with a Bukhar or a maser? So what's the problem there? Um, it's treated differently, right? The avoda is different. So, you can't, you have to do it one way or the other way. You have to do it either as a shlamim or as a bechor. So you can't, there's no practical way to do it. So Yirachi Stavu V'yachlu Kibechor Kamaser. They can be left, they can be put out to pasture until they get a mum. And um, they have to be eaten with the restrictions of Bechor and Maser. What is that restriction? So Bechor and Maser can't be treated just as any commercial butcher transaction, right? It has to be done it can't be done as, part of a mass, or part of a commercial operation, out of respect. It has to be done kind of individually, by the person, or, obviously you can hire a butcher to do it, but you can't just process it through the regular process. So the animal that got mixed up also has to be treated with that respect as well. Um, and hakol yicholim lihisari, this is the question you were asking. These mixtures apply to anything, chus min achatos min asham, but except for achatos and asham, because those apply to, um, I mean, those are different kinds of animals. They can't get mixed up because, the Gemara will discuss, how is it that, chatos and asham can't be mixed up with other animals. So we'll see that in the Gemara. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to know my afilu. What does it mean, even 1 in 10,000? Like, obviously, if we're talking about one valid korban, it gets mixed up with 10,000 invalid ones. Of course, the one is going to be invalid, right? The rov is invalid, so of course the one that got mixed up is invalid. This is how where the Gemara reinterprets it. Zevachim shenisarvu behen chatos hamesos. It means that you have a herd of regular sacrifices, and a small number, or even 1 in 10,000, got mixed up with it. That is a chatos hamesos, got mixed up with them. Afilu achabrivo, even if it's only one chatos hamesa and 10,000 regular karbanos yamusu kulan, they all get the stringency of the chatos hamesa. So Gemara says, well, Tanin Chadozina, we know that already. We have a brisa, a Mishnah. Kol ha'asurim l'gavi mizbeach, osrin b'chol shein. Anything that becomes forbidden for being on the mizbeach, if there's a mixture, if it becomes mixed up with other ones, then, again, this is like the 1 in 10,000 thing, right? Even though there's only one that's, in the mixture that's usser, and the other ones are all fine, but they all become usser. For example, Haraveva nirba, for example, an animal that, it was involved in bestiality. If there's only one animal like that in a whole herd of valid karbanos, then they all become forbidden. So we already know this, right, from this other Mishnah, the Mishnah in Tamura. Right, so what is the Mishnah here in Zevachim telling us that we don't know already? Amar Vashi, Amriti l'shmate kame to Rav Shimi. I told this to Rav Shimi, and he said, yeah, you do need both of them. The Ime Hasam, if they only have the Mishnah from Tamura, Havamina Haniga Mile Legavoa. That's only if I would think that when it says Asurin, it means it's only us. It can't be sacrificed. It can't be on the mizbeach. But maybe, um, for, maybe we wouldn't be so strict when it comes to a person using it for his private use. In other words, I would think that if it's 1 in 10,000, okay, so don't bring any of them on the mizbeach, but they can all be permitted for, regular use. So that's what the Mishnah is telling us, that no. So our Mishnah, so our Mishnah in Zevachim is telling us that no, it's detailed that you can't use it for yourself. You have to put it out to pasture or whatever. V'imei hacha, and if we only had our Mishnah, havamina hanihudi sure hananinu. These animals that our Mishnah is talking about there are asurim b'hana. They can't be used for any kind of benefit. Avahane emalo. But the Mishnah and Tamura, those which are listed there, which are not all, asurim b'hana. Um, so I would have thought that maybe it's okay, to use it even as a carbon. So the Mishnahs, both the Mishnahs are telling us that no, not the case. That everything is forbidden. So, Delavi
How do we
Saranon,
learn that they all have to be killed? All these animals have to be killed.
yeah, or they have to be put out, left to die, right?
But
Uh,
one of them has to do with the head yote, and one has to do that it's not okay. But where are we learning
no,
that?
because we would have thought, if only we only had the Mishnah tomorrow, we would have thought that it's okay for a head yot. So our Mishnah comes along to tell us that no, they really, really they have to be. It's not contradicting the other one; it's supplementing the other one. It's saying that not only is it forbidden for use, but it has to be put out to die. I mean, sorry, not only is it forbidden for the Mizbeach, but it can't be used by anybody. It has to be left to die. So Gemara says the Lavi Surah no Ninhu Hatanale, but our Mishnah also, like at the end of our Mishnah, it tells us about those which are not Asurim Bahana, and still they're forbidden to be used. So Gemara says Mikatani B'Kama. The Mishnah didn't say the 1 to 10,000 thing. Um, so that's what it's adding. V'nidnei havalo baiha. So again, why do you need the Mishnah and Tamura? Um, or sorry, why do you need our Mishnah and Zvachim? You could just say that in the Mishnah in Tamura. You could say the second part of our Mishnah, which is that animals that are forbidden only for um, which tells us that animals that are forbidden only as korbanos but can be used by a regular person, those cases may just say that in Torah. So Gemara answers, Takanta itzrichale. What do we need our Mishnah for? Our Mishnah is needed for um, to tell you that the animals can be left to graze until they get a mum, and then they can be used for an individual for regular chulin use. Now, we could have said that in the Mishnah and Tamura also, but I don't know why the Gemara doesn't. I guess that's not really the topic of the Mishnah and Tamura, and it's more of the topic here. So that's why we have a separate Mishnah to tell us. Excuse me, to tell us that these animals can yurad shistavu, that they can be put out to pasture until they get a mum, and then the ones, not specifically just the ones at the end that we're talking about, the ones about which we said that um, you can use them as chulin once they get a
But
mum.
then we'll just say that we can't, that the Mishnah over there says that it can be not only not on the Mizbech, but also not for kol echad, but kol hedyot. So now we're changing that
I'm
conclusion.
sorry, ask again.
I thought we just learned a few moments ago that if the Mishnah in Temurah said they can't be used on Mizbeach, and similarly, they can't be used by anybody. And now we're changing that. We're saying they can be used. They put out the graze and then can be used.
It depends on the circumstance. On those which um, one second, those which can be eaten by or be used by a hedyot, like bachar and maser, that's fine. Um, but those which are still kachim, and in the sense that they cannot be used by for chulin, they can't be consumed by as a regular person. Those have to be put out to pasture.
And then they can be used later on if they develop a mum.
Yeah, then they can be sold, and the funds be used for a carbon, and then they're decommissioned. If an animal has a mum, it can be decommissioned.
So when do we say that it just says it cannot be used on the Mizbeach, it cannot be used by any person? For which do we say that then?
Okay, so if it's a chatas, then it has to be for a specific sin or whatever. Then that's when you have to just let it die. You can't wait. Even with the mum, there's nothing you can do with it. But for other kinds of korbanos, you can decommission them once they have developed a mum. And then once they're decommissioned, they're chulin, right? And the money is used to purchase a new carbon.
And how is that different from what the Mishnah in Temurah says?
No, the Mishnah Torah is agreeing. But we're proposing, like, why do we need both of them? I might have thought that the Mishnah and Torah is saying something different. So no, they're actually saying the same thing. The only reason we have two Mishnayos is that the Mishnah and Torah is not dealing with the case of where you can, where like the case of Bechor and Maser, where you can actually you don't need to wait for a mum. You can decommission it. You're not decommissioning it, but because it can be eaten by a regular person, just with minor restrictions. So you treat them all that way. Um, and you sell them and buy a new Bechor Maser, but the animal itself doesn't have much restriction on it, even as a Bechor Maser. But the Mishnah Torah is not dealing with that kind of thing. That's why we've repeated everything in our Mishnah just to get to that case.
So you can use the Bechor, the animal Bechor. No, you have to
You
sell
can't
it.
use it itself. You can sell it, and once you've sold it, then you can use it. It doesn't have the restrictions of kachim. You don't have to wait for a move, right? Am I right? Um,
I mean, I don't know. I was learning
no, no,
in
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's not
in
correct.
Beitza
That's not
I
correct.
think it was in Beitza they bring up the concept of Bechor. I mean, it could be other places that it has to that you can't today you can't use it because there's no Beit HaMikdash, and therefore you let it sit in graze until it develops a mum. Then they can shecht it and eat it, and the Kohen give it whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're correct. Yeah, I misstated. Um,
So I'm getting confused here by this addition from Tamur and why we're adding. Why would the
where
Mishnah is repeating it here?
the
What?
Mishnah is repeating it because of the case, as I understand it, because of the case of Bechor and Maser, right? Where there it doesn't even have to be sold. That's the difference of Bechor and Maser, and the Mishnah Torah is not dealing with that. Um, it could, I mean, what I understand is the Mishnah Torah could have dealt with that, but the Gemara doesn't seem to be troubled by that. It seems like that's off topic for the Mishnah and Torah. But in the context of Zevachim, where it discusses all these remedies, then it makes sense to include the remedy for Bechor and Maser, which is they have to develop a mum, but then they don't even have to be sold. They can just be since a regular person can consume Bechor and Maser just with minor restrictions. Um, so that's what you do with every animal in the mixture. So this is a good place to stop for today. We'll pick it up here tomorrow. Um, Dehayat.
Yak your cock.
Okay. Hi, John. Have a good day, everybody.